We recognize that. You don't need to be an ornithologist to recognize the feeling that comes from that. Think about where in your body you feel it when you look at these slides. What kind of feeling do you get when you see a bird happily eating? It feels comfortable, right? It makes you relax. You have mirror neurons in your body that pick up on what they're putting out. And when they're not happy, you'll really know it. Are you ready? Take a deep breath. Right here in the city, out in the country, out in the deep wilderness, there's species of hawks that specialize in hunting for birds. And the birds always pay attention because maybe the birds have an old story too. A long time ago, this bird ate a lot of us, and you know what? It still is. And they got to pay attention. And get the feeling in your body from that picture. That's that bird on the wing. You feel it? You know how to do this. It's right there. You can tune into this and pick up on it instantly. It is not rocket science. And you know when they're pissed because the cat's sneaking around. You've probably all seen that. You know the feeling. Tune into it. They'll tell you things. Now how about if the birds are talking about the cats and they're talking about the hawks? What are they saying about us? Uh-oh. If we have small awareness, we make a big disturbance. Okay? The opposite is true as well. If our awareness is small and we wear it like a wetsuit, our disturbance is big. And we walk through the wilderness or the natural world or the park and we don't see much in the way of wildlife because it feels us coming a long way out. The birds talk about us and say, here comes a person not paying attention. It makes them very uncomfortable. Let's go back to the feeling of the bird happy, the bird's in love, the bird's eating, and just get that in your body now, okay? Listen to the sound in the four directions. Feel yourself in your body. This is what we can do. Our awareness can grow bigger than our disturbance. When we pull our awareness all the way to the horizon, our disturbance comes all the way into our body. And then we move more gently, and the birds no longer fear us in our own neighborhood because we see them all the time. We start to recognize them as individuals, and there's threads and there's ropes, you know? And all of a sudden the birds are telling us things. They're telling us when a person is coming who's really stressed. They're telling us when a hawk is moving because we're not disturbing it. We can learn to sit still and practice with our mindfulness mentors, the birds, the squirrels and the deer, depending on where you live, and they'll come close to you and they'll connect with you and feel comfortable with your presence if you go there every day. It doesn't have to be a bench. It could be a chair. It could be the ground. It could be right outside your door. It could be a step outside your front door. And you'll start to realize that you have neighbors that are always there. And they'll get comfortable with you and they'll start to come near you and feed by you and be comfortable. And you'll start to develop what we call that energy of the sit spot. You'll become a walking piece of nature. That's your nervous system integrating. But if you want to take the integration to another level, you got to think about film. Some of you might remember this stuff. You take a bunch of pictures, you pop that little thing out, and you put it in the drawer, and then a year later you find it, you're like, oh my God, what's on this thing? And then you have to take it to develop it before you can find out. Then you see that your finger was in front of the lens for every picture. That used to happen. And now, I want you to draw the correlation. If you don't develop the film of your experience, it does not actually integrate. So if you have an experience with a bird that's really cool, and you go to tell it to somebody, it will actually develop it in your nervous system and it will integrate. You know, the more of your senses that you use to tell the story, the more that it stays with you. Okay? So you got to tell your story, but please tell it to someone who actually wants to hear it. One of the big complaints I hear from people is that I just had this really cool experience and I tried to tell everybody about it, but no one wants to hear my story. I'm like, did it occur to you to ask them? Because sometimes if you ask them, they'll actually say, I can't right now, but I'd love to catch it later, right? But as soon as you get permission to share your story, be prepared that after you tell your story, they're going to want to tell you theirs. Because storytelling is missing in our culture today. It used to be, those Kalahari friends of mine, they tell stories to each other 3 times a day, and they have 25 to 35 people on average that they can talk to that will listen to their story. I think that's the recommended daily allowance for our ancestors, okay? But in modern times, people in our social survey said they don't get to tell their stories at all to anybody, which is really what's missing. So tell your story to people who want to listen. Remember that the nature journey requires the people journey. Those two are a virtuous cycle. And together we can reclaim our stories and build our connections and our ropes. And that's the goal here, to activate that ancient nervous system that we all share with our ancestors, that optimizes us so we can be loving, happy, healthy, vital, creative, and care for each other. And that's how we can connect ourselves to other people and to nature. And that's the secret of becoming supernatural. Thank you.